After Paul instructs women to dress modestly and to be quiet, for she is not to assume authority over a man, he goes on to say in 1 Timothy 13:15, "For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. But women will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, love, holiness, and with propriety." But if Adam was not the one deceived, why did he participate in eating the fruit? Does this mean he knowingly did this? Does this mean he knowingly was deceived? Isn't that worse than someone who did the wrong thing because they were actually tricked? And furthermore, why is Paul holding women accountable for something that Eve did? And finally, are women who can't have children ineligible for being saved? If you think you can defend this disgusting book, then please give us a call because the show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome everybody. Today is January the 28th, 2024. I'm your host, Richard Gilliver, and joining me today is the absolutely wonderful Sydney Davis Jr. And based on that absolutely wonderful intro, I'm going to go straight above Greg's head, the executive producer, and as producer of the show, I'm going to just tell everybody that I've made the executive decision that you are now the most recent official host of the show. So congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has always been a blast to be on the show, and I am so excited to join the team. I've been a fan for years and years and years, and yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me. This is awesome.
Absolutely, and it is great to have you. We got so much great feedback after the last time you were on. We really had no choice. Talk Heathen is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 non-profit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Talk Heathen is a live calling show, and we have open lines. So get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/call-th. And of course, as always, it is our time for, as Dr. Ben would say, our favorite section of the show, Talk Heathen to Me, where we get into the questions of the week. And last week we asked you, why hasn't God defeated Satan? And here are your top 3 answers. Number 3, the Dead Money All-Stars says, why hasn't God defeated Satan? Well, where's he going to send them afterwards? Home? Fair point. Number 2 is X-Million1704. If God defeated Satan, then there would be nothing for him to save us from. Oh, I think God himself is enough of a challenge without having other ingredients thrown in. What do you think about that one, Sydney?
I mean, yeah, that's true. And also, I feel like if God defeated Satan, then there would be nothing to save us from. God created everything. So I feel like if he just hadn't created anything, there would be no Satan to worry about on a world that didn't exist. So,
Yeah, it all gets a little bit confusing when you start to unwind it, doesn't it? Right. Number 1 is Tilting Windmill. God hasn't defeated Satan because, well, God always defeats evil, right? See what you did there. The prompt of the week for next week is name a petty act of God. Enter your best answer below the video in the comments, and next week we will reveal the top 3 answers. But of course, as usual, got to go to the co-host and get Sydney's answer. Name a petty act of God.
Literally, the creation of human beings, I think, is the pettiest thing he could have done. Because I mean, think about it. You're like, I feel like I need to be worshipped. I know. I'm going to create an entire existence of creatures that have never existed before. I'm going to make it their fault that I'm already mad at them. I'm going to predetermine the behaviors that they do, and then I'm going to punish them for those behaviors. And they're only allowed to get forgiveness if they ask me. I'm just going to set this whole thing up as just like this cyclical game. That's pretty petty. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think actually that whole description should be the dictionary definition of petty. It is, it really is. a perfect description
Right.
of pettiness
Right.
and of God's actual behavior.
Right.
So, give us your responses,
Right.
people out there. Don't do it in the live chat. Do it down below in the comments.
Right.
We want to know what you come up with. Give us your best answer and tune in next week when we reveal the top 3. Of course, this isn't all done by us, myself and Sydney, and it's not all done by the people who respond to things. We have a crew behind us as well. So let's go and have a look at that wonderful crew. Look at them. Absolutely lovely and quite beardy this week as well. Apart from Hein, who's decided to go just for the mustache and not the beard because he's a little bit of a rebel. And I think maybe that's the way forward. Maybe next week when we tune in, it will just be a mustachioed crew and nothing else. We will see. Tune in next week to find out. We have calls on the line, and we are going to jump in with Noah from Tennessee, who is asking, do you think sexism in the Bible is more harmful or less than the apologists who tried to rationalize it? Noah, go through a little bit what you mean by that.
Well, I've noticed a lot of apologetics will try and get around and reinterpret verses that are very clearly about putting women in an inferior place and try to make it sound like an honorable situation for them. Like one verse, if I remember correctly, roughly says it is glory to a woman to submit to her husband.
It makes you wonder if they're asking us or telling us, right? Like,
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. It's like, is it?
And I didn't know if it was more damaging. The sexism that's inherent, the damage it does, we all see it. But there's an entire group of Christians that try to rewrite it to bring more women into Christianity and spread the creep. Hello. Hold on.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw on Twitter recently, and I think it was a parody account who has this kind of this trope of pretending to be a Christian and going out there and saying things like, I cheated on my wife and she's come back to me, and she's done the right thing, and it's because she was withholding naughtiness from me. So I was compelled to go out and cheat,
right?
Because it was entirely her fault. But thankfully, she's come back to God, and she's doing the right thing now. So we're a happily married couple again. Now that's a parody account. I'm almost certain of it. But the amount of genuine Christians, the amount of genuine apologists who were responding to that with, we're glad your wife has done the right thing. Amen, brother. And it was amazing to see that kind of amount of, first of all, that they didn't realize it was a parody account. It is almost certainly obvious. And secondly, that they were responding with such vigor to such weird and hateful kind of message, which does come from the Bible itself.
Absolutely. And something else I remember from church is women, a lot of times, especially as you get older in the Baptist church where I grew up, you're separated from the guys for Sunday school every now and then, especially in the high school and college groups. And they would always talk about, it's a woman's job. It's a woman's glory to be there for her husband, to satisfy her husband, to serve her husband. And most of the conversation would always be about how hard it is, about, even when it's difficult, like even when you feel like you don't want to, even when it's really, and I remember thinking, how is this our glory? At least say it's a difficult job, right? But the way that the verses are set up, it's almost as if you should be glad and grateful and do it cheerfully and joyfully. And I really don't see that many people doing it cheerfully and joyfully. They're doing it with a smile on their face that they are told they want to have. It's very interesting. If we actually sat down with some of these women and asked them if it's truly a joy, I wonder how many would agree that it actually is.
Yeah, Noah, what do you
I don't think
about
too
that?
very many.
Yeah.
I don't think too very many of them would. I know my grandmother, I tell her she's what Christianity is supposed to be. She's the best of what it can be. And
interesting.
But she's been married twice, and both of them were abusive, and the entire process was her responsibility to stay with them and try and make them better when they wouldn't even accept her help.
Yes, absolutely.
So.
And I will say this. I know that with the soundbite of what I just said, people might say, "Oh, so it's terrible to have a husband or serve a husband." If you're in a great if you're in a great relationship that's give and take, I love doing things for my partner, and my partner loves doing things for me. And so it's not that the idea of a joyful relationship serving your partner is impossible. It's the rules that then follow in many Christian religions where it's not give and take. It's just give, give, give. And that's just your job. And you shouldn't expect anything back. That's where the hard work and the daily effort, it shouldn't be that hard every single day. It should be something that you feel like you're contributing to as opposed to serving, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, a good relationship is both people working to make each other better.
Right, exactly.
It's a great question you've asked, Noah. The question: do you think sexism in the Bible is more harmful or less than the apologists who try to rationalize it? Because it really, we could say that without those apologists, that sexism, that the Bible is, for want of a better word, a living book. It is something that informs how people live in a living religion. We're not talking about the religion of Zeus. There might be a minority of people who follow it, the neo-pagans who follow it, but for the most part, no one follows Zeus anymore. Nobody follows Zeus's instructions. It is not a living religion. But the Bible it's part of a living religion, and it informs. So I think without the apologists there to put forward those words, then that it's in the Bible, I don't think would have too much impact without those people preaching it. We've got plenty of books, we've got plenty of literature which is there, which we have access to, but we don't actually follow. We don't actually hear preached from the pulpit, if you like. We don't hear preached from street corners. We don't hear it informing how people live, and we don't hear it as instructions as how people should live. So I think just the simple fact that it's written down is really neither here nor there. It needs those people who are informed by it to convey that message and interpret it in a certain way to pass it on.
I think that's a great point.
It's almost like a chicken and the egg thing when you really think about it. It's like, is it worse to be written because it exists, people preach it and share it? Or is it worse to be preached and shared because just being written isn't that harmful? It's kind of cyclical almost.
Yeah, they do kind of feed on each other.
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you come from a background where you kind of had a religion where there were people doing this, there were preachers doing this and apologists doing it, or is it something you've kind of encountered later?
Most of the adult life in the churches I went to growing up were kind of tucked away, even in my own family. So I'm not entirely sure how many of them, if any, did anything like that. But I'm Southern Baptist Pentecostal background, so fair guess would say at least a few of them.
I feel that.
You mentioned earlier about your grandma being kind of the greatest example of what Christianity should be. How do you think your grandma...
I mean to say she's charitable. She does her best to, help everybody.
That's how I took what we were saying, that's how I interpreted what you were saying. I just wondered, with her being that kind of way, how you think she might react if she came across these apologists and preachers who were kind of putting women down and being overly sexist and putting this kind of view forward that they were saying, this is coming from the Bible, this is how women should be. And how do you think your grandma would react to that if she came across it, being a practicing Christian?
Well, I've had a few tough discussions with her, and I've even gotten her to acknowledge that, like, the Old Testament acknowledges that magic is a thing that exists. I've gotten her to acknowledge that evolution is a thing that exists.
Interesting.
But it seems like Well, she thinks humans were created separate from the evolutionary process. So, but that's neither here nor there. When it comes to the more difficult questions, her response usually defaults to she doesn't understand, but she's seen God's impact on her life, and so will hold to the Bible as the best authority she has.
Got it.
She'll agree. She'll agree sexism is wrong. She'll agree abusive spouses are wrong. But there's something that's not letting her let go of. Well, this is kind of in the entire package.
Right. And I appreciate that kind of honesty from Christians when they say, hey, it's not perfect. Hey, there is stuff in here that I'm not a huge fan of, but I also recognize that if it's part of the document, that's just part of how it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that question that you've called in with, Noah. Do you have anything else before we move on?
No, I just thought it would be a good question to preface the episode with. So
Yeah,
I thought I'd give it a
absolutely.
Great question.
Thank you. And please call back again. Do appreciate it. I really like that question. I genuinely do think that was a brilliant question.
It was.
We are going to move on, and we have been running our brick fundraiser for a while now. We will be completing phase 1 at the end of January, so very soon indeed. Our featured brick this week comes from Nate from Texas, who engraved "For all mankind with hope" from Nate. Thank you. That was a nice message.
That was nice.
Thank you so much for your purchase, Nate. Get your purchase in by the end of the month, so you've not got long left. Tiny.cc/ACA bricks, and the ACA wants you to know what's going on in our community, and for that, we've got an updated website. Head to www.atheist-community.org, where you can learn about the organization itself, its policies, and how you can get involved. And we want to hear from you. We want to know what you liked, what you thought was effective, and more importantly, what you thought we could do better. Email us at tv@atheist-community.org and let us know. And available on tiny.cc/ACA flyers are printable calling flyers. Post these with permission to community bulletin boards so people know they should call our show and defend their faith. If you do post any flyers, make sure to snap a picture of it, place it, and send it to tv@atheist-community.org, and we may feature a photo of you on an upcoming show. So we had last week, Ben and Jamie played a voicemail, which was interesting, to say the least. Well, guess what, folks? It turns out that the same person left us a second voicemail.
Oh, boy.
So we're going to play that for you. I've not heard this yet, and I don't think Sydney has yet. So we're going to be reacting to this live just as you are. So let's have this voicemail. Let's listen to it.
There ain't no God. We're the gods. If anything, there's a higher power, and we have no idea who the fuck this higher power is. But that's out of the fucking question, dude, because at this point, we don't have the full truth of the fucking higher powers. That don't fucking matter. What matters is that you guys are the fucking gods. I'm the god. You're the god. We're all the gods. Like, you gotta realize you guys are capable of so much. I'm not saying, no, don't enslave people. Don't fucking control them. No, I'm saying tap into yourself and realize how much potential you guys got. Realize how powerful you are with that pineal gland, with that third eye. You are capable of so much, and use that power for good. Use that good energy, because I believe in good and bad energy, and I want to use that energy for good. I'm not a fucking bash or anything, dude. Fuck religion, bro. Fuck all that shit, dude. There ain't no fucking God, and if there is, there's a higher power. We have no idea who the fuck it is. That's out of the fucking question. Like I said, that don't matter. But all that matters is that I want you guys to know you're the God. Like, I'm a God too. You're a God too. You have the abilities of one too. Ain't aware of it. Peace out.
Wow.
Part of that, I'm going to use as my daily affirmations when I look in the mirror every day. I'm going to be like, you can do so much. You have so much potential. You've got this. I'm probably going to cut out the part where he says he's not talking about not enslaving people. I think he meant he's not saying to enslave people. I think I'm going to assume he didn't mean that double negative, but the rest is like, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, that confused me a little bit as well. It was almost like I was saying, go out and enslave people. Go on. I'm not saying you shouldn't enslave people. That's absolutely fine. There was also quite a lot of talk about the old pineal gland and things in there. It all came across as very woo. I'm not sure why. And while I appreciate the message, sir, while I appreciate you taking the time to send the message and the passion, indeed, with which you delivered it,
Yes,
which was also very impressive, I'm not entirely sure as a skeptic, rather than just as an atheist. I'm not particularly sure that as a skeptic, kind of being congratulated for not accepting organized religion, not accepting a creator God out there, while at the same time being told, I am my own God and there is an inner magic which comes from the pineal gland, is something that I would necessarily take on board as an affirmation. It's a little bit kind of, don't believe in magic,
right.
unless it's a fairy, and then you're allowed to believe in magic. And that's a little bit confusing, but I do appreciate the passion with which it was delivered. It was a very passionate message. Sydney.
Yeah, I thought it was a roller coaster. It was hype, question, hype, I did hype, okay. Lots of passion there. Appreciate the passion.
Yeah, if you want to send us a voicemail, whether you want to congratulate us for being our own gods, whether you want to just simply tell us that we're wrong, or whether you want to kind of give us some positive feedback or some constructive criticism, you can do that. You can give us a call and do that, or an email if you prefer to do it via email. We do appreciate those messages. I've seen in the side chat while the show's been running, there's been a couple of theists in there, kind of doing the thing, and this really frustrates me. We see this in the comments section of the shows, of the shorts, both on YouTube and on TikTok and all the other platforms we're on, where people will sit there and tell us we're wrong, or sit there and tell us Jesus loves us. This is not compelling. This show has over 90,000 subscribers. Now, I don't know the denomination of them all, don't know whether they're all atheists, but let's assume, because it's an atheist show, let's just assume that's 90,000 atheist subscribers. That's 90,000 people you could convince not only a generic God, but your particular God is true.
Right.
And the way to do that is not by sitting in the comment section saying, oh, bro, Jesus loves you. Or you're not going to go to hell. You're going to go to hell unless you accept Jesus. That is not the way to convince somebody. We've literally got a phone number down there. That way you can, under Sydney, you can call and give us a compelling argument. And by compelling argument, I mean something that we would not be able to refute, something which corresponds with the truth, something by which giving us and convincing us we would be compelled to believe in the God you believe in. Now, why do so many people waste their time just putting in the comment section? It frustrates the hell out of me. Just give us a call. That's what we're here for, and it will benefit you. Imagine the props God would give you if you went to your nightly prayer, kneeled down, got your palms together, and sat there, sincerely beseeching God and said, God, thank you for all you've done for me. Thank you for all you do for me on a daily basis. I thought it was time I'd give you something back. And today, I've called into an atheist call-in show with over 90,000 subscribers. Mind you, that's quite a lot.
That's a lot. That is a lot of subscribers.
And I've compelled all of those people to believe in you, to follow you, God. And I've done it for the love of you and for the love that you give me. Imagine the props you would get for that.
You would raptured on the spot.
Absolutely. You'd be taken up, sat on God's lap, It'd be probably touching you inappropriately if the God of the Bible's anything to go about. All good, nothing to lose. And all you'd have to do is call in the show and convince us. On that note, do we have a caller? We do have a caller. Nate, again, is it the same Nate? Is it a different Nate? I don't know.
Today's the Nate Show,
It's
where we only talk to people named
the
Nate.
Nate Show. I'm going to leave it a bit. I'm not sure if it's actually been screened yet, so apologies for that. Viewers, let me just move on. So we've done this thing where we've had the voicemail. Let's have a look at a couple of screenshots because we do have some great screenshots when people were talking about the comment section. And the first one we've got says, atheists sure spend a lot of time talking about God.
Yes. I've even said that about myself. I've said I've never spent as much time talking about God as I have since I became an atheist.
Yeah, we do. We do spend a lot of time talking about God. I don't know why theists think this is kind of a gotcha when they say this. It's almost like they've got one over on us. Of course we talk about God. We have a call-in show. I know many atheists. I live in a country which is very much a lot of people. Most of the people I know are atheists or openly atheists. People don't talk about religion here. And where I live, people sit around talking about God. They don't do it. I do it because I'm on a call-in show. Yes. Talking to people who believe. That is why I talk about God. And to kind of leave a comment on the call-in show, which is specifically set up to talk about God and what people believe. Why would you be surprised that those people are talking about God? Cindy, tell us about some of your experiences in this area.
Yeah, this show that's about defeating argumentation against religion sure talks about religion a lot. Am I right, guys? Thinking, got him. No, it's like, yes, we talk about God all the time, but that's okay. Talk Heathen, the show where we will now talk about anything but God. Please call in about anything but God. If you want to talk about God, don't call in. Like, that doesn't make any sense. We talk about God all the time. Yes.
God calls no.
Right. No, please. Well, and here's the interesting thing is that you can say that. You can say atheists sure talk about God all the time. One, it's usually atheist entertainers who are literally on channels to talk about this stuff. It's like saying, wow, on the cooking show, they won't stop cooking. Well, I don't know. Watch something else. I have no idea. Rachel Ray does not have any other skills. But also, Christians talk about God all the time. I live in Tennessee, and everywhere I go, it's God bless, buying groceries. God bless when you sneeze, praying for you here and there. We all talk about God all the time, especially in the United States. It's what we are talking about in reference to God that should matter. When we're providing actual facts and evidence to refute what we're being told about the existence of God, that is still talking about God, but not in the way that they think, I guess.
Yeah, very strange. Our caller is ready. Hopefully he'll be talking about something appropriate like pickup trucks or fishing rather than God. So I'm going to bring in Nate from Maryland, who's a new atheist and wants to know, how do I cope with the religious people in my life? Nate, how are you? And kind of go through a little bit what it is specifically you want to know.
Yeah, I actually think it's kind of interesting that you were talking about, like, you go anywhere in this country and you have people talking about God at you. And that's kind of what I'm dealing with. My family members in a lot of different places, basically, whenever I try to engage with them, there's always some kind of a religious tilt to it. And it's really getting on my nerves, but I feel like I'm in a place where I can't exactly be honest with them because I feel like my honesty does not kind of match up with their fragility, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I guess, like, do you guys have any experiences like that, and how do you cope with that?
Do you mind, Richard, if I answer this?
No, please.
So I'm in a very similar position that you're in. People are always surprised to find out that not a lot of people in my immediate family or my life know that I'm an atheist because all I do is talk about it on the internet. Like, that's my whole brand. But I think it depends on the time and the place. So, for example, I like to host Thanksgiving, and oftentimes I'm asked to lead the prayer for Thanksgiving. It doesn't really bother me that much. I've decided I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm just going to allow other people to lead the prayer. But if it's something that doesn't really bother me, I just let it go. If it's something that does bother me, depending on who the relative is, or if I feel like there's any progress to be made at all, I'll ask questions. I'll present commentary to the antithesis. For example, they say, "Oh, thank God that so and so their sickness went away, or so and so's out of the hospital." I'll say, "Or, we could also thank the doctor because I don't feel like he gets thanked nearly enough." I never say the word atheism. I never say the word, anti-God or anything like that. It's just, or, we could thank the doctor. "Oh, thank God you made it through that job interview. God bless." It's like, or, we can thank me because I got the degree and I interviewed and I reached out to them on LinkedIn and I submitted my resume. I do that. And because a lot of times, one, it makes people laugh when they'll say, "I'm grateful to God that I got this house." And I'll say, "I'm thankful to you that you went on to Zillow and you typed in your budget and you found the house and you did the tour." And it just kind of passes through that way, where there's not really any kind of conversation on God isn't real, atheism is better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Bible's lying. It's more of you train people to recognize that you're just not going to sit still when that kind of conversation comes up. And yet a fight has not happened. An argument has not happened. You've just done a good job of letting people know if they mention those things around you, you're either going to laugh about it or you're just going to shut it down. If that makes sense. Is that helpful at all?
Yeah, I think so. And I appreciate that, you kind of handle these situations with delicacy, because I think that's that's exactly what's needed. It's I think that's really helpful advice. I'm going to try something like that.
It goes back to that whole people learn how to treat you based on how you allow them to, whether it's about this, whether it's about something else. And so once you've kind of established that you're just not going to allow that kind of talk around you, but in a way that's non-confrontational, it doesn't give anybody the opportunity to lead into an argument or a fight. It's amazing how quickly those things dispel, because not everybody's in a position where they want to cut off family, where they want to go no contact. That's not always what you want to do, but you also don't want to sit there and have to listen to stuff like that makes you crazy after a while, because it just doesn't make any sense to you, or you just haven't believed it in forever, especially if it's in your own car or under your own roof. And so oftentimes you just slowly teach people that you're just not going to listen to that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. I think that's some really good advice.
Thanks.
Nate, what's your kind of friend circle like in regards to this? Are they all religious as well, atheists as well, or do you have kind of atheist friends you can talk to about this outside of your immediate family?
Well, I grew up Jewish, so a lot of my friends around me, they kind of see like the cultural Judaism as kind of their connection with the religion, and myself included. But I also do have family that's like, Catholic, and we spend a lot of time together, so it's nice to kind of be able to have time with friends and family where, like, God isn't thanked for every single thing, and like it goes on and on and on about it.
Right.
And as far as like my other friends too, like religion doesn't really come up, so it's not that much of a problem.
Right. I think it's one of those things where when you open the floor for, oh, thank God for this, or thank somebody else for this, it not only highlights that you don't think that God deserves thanks for everything, but it also highlights to that person how often they mindlessly say things like that. The number of times that I'll present somebody else we could thank, or something else that could get credit, or some other reason something worked out, people laugh and then they go, "Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I guess you're right." And once you've done that more than one time, I honestly think it helps people understand how often they don't give themselves credit for how much they do. So not only are you saying, I'm an atheist and I don't want to hear that shit, but you're also saying, why do you keep giving away the credit that you deserve for your hard work? And people start to notice they do that not just to God, but they do that in a lot of areas of their life. And it gives them something to think about, especially when you do it over and over again as just almost like a training course on, you need to think yourself. You need to take your own full responsibility for this. You need to be able to say that you worked really hard. It just kind of makes people think about, not only do they give God a lot of credit, but they give other people a lot of credit for things that they deserve to be a little braggadocious about sometimes.
Yeah, it very much relates to a lot of the people in my life, that very situation. I think part of the frustration for me is I care so much about them. I don't want them throwing away that recognition that they deserve.
Exactly.
And I think that they can tend to be really ungrateful when the only thing that they give thanks to isn't something that answers back, at least from my perspective.
And that's a great way to word it to them too. If they ever bring it up, like, why do you always say that? Well, I've just noticed, man, I care a lot about you, and I've just noticed you never ever take credit. And you could even wager it, like, don't you think God would want you to be proud of yourself too? Like, isn't that something that he would want for you? I don't know. In their minds, you could even frame it that way, the exact way that you just said it. And it sounds like very sincere. You care about them and you just want them to stop handing off what you know for a fact they worked so hard for, or they put a lot of effort into, or they deserve a little credit for.
Yeah. I'm really glad that I called today. This was very helpful to me personally.
I'm glad you called too. Yeah, I'm so glad you called, because it's such a realistic scenario. The knee-jerk reaction is cut him off, stop talking to him, tell him God's not real. But in reality, what you're describing, I feel like, is 90% of the scenarios that we find ourselves in.
I will say it did take me a few months of listening and maybe also kind of stewing in that I should never talk to them again. And
Yes.
so it's taken some time to kind of get to where I'm at, where I've kind of said to myself, I still want a relationship with these people,
right,
but I want it to be in more of an equitable kind of way.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And it sounds like you're dealing with it really well, mate.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like you're dealing with it really, really well. It sounds like you're kind of approaching it from a good perspective as well, and kind of you're open to, or rather than being kind of overly confrontational about it, as a lot of new atheists are. It sounds like you're trying to weigh up things, even when you're having internal struggles and kind of thinking, well, how should I approach it? It seems like you're really sitting there and trying to weigh these things up, which is really important, not to have these knee-jerk reactions. So good on you. You're doing a good job.
I will say it has been a lot of listening to Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience and all of you different folks over there with such a wide range of perspectives, even through atheism. The one thing I hear the most is you can't just paint atheists with a broad brush, and I think it's really helped me to slow down and to just analyze.
Yes.
And I think it's one of the reasons why I just really appreciate everything that what you folks do. It's mind blowing that I didn't find this sooner.
I think what you said is so valuable there. Just slow down, breathe, slow down, and think about, like you said, the relationships with these people, the potential, the knee-jerk reactions. And once you've had time to really think about it, you can come forward with how you want to handle it. I think that's what you said is really valuable.
Well, yeah, thanks so much. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and thanks so much for taking my call.
Yeah, you too, and you're welcome to call back anytime, Nate. To give us a call back. Let us know how you're going on. Let us know how things progress, and we're very, very happy to take your call again in the future just to get those updates. I'm very interested in these theists who are talking smack in the chat to give us a call. Don't just talk smack in the chat. Give us a call. Call.
Say it to my face virtually.
say virtually to our virtual faces. Mine, which is looking rather red. I've been under the weather for the past week or so, so I don't know whether that's why I look like William Shatner or not. But for some reason, I'm looking very red today. I'm very blushy cheeked, and it's not because I've drank a lot of whiskey, which I wish it was.
It's because of that beautiful lady in the background.
I think it might be. I think I'm just getting all flustered. I don't know how to cope. Been alive 47 years, and I've just never seen a beautiful woman before, and I don't know how to cope with it. So yeah, that I've completely lost my train of thought.
Do you want me? I can absolutely shout out the top 5 patrons if you would like.
You can absolutely shout out the top 5 patrons.
We also had a super chat at the beginning.
Yes,
of the
we
chat,
did.
And I'm looking for it.
I'm
and
going to lose my job here if you carry on being this good.
No, I can't find their name. I want to say
Miranda Rensberger.
Miranda Rensberger. Thank you so much. Oh, there it is. It's right here. Miranda says, last night I prayed not to be eaten by a tiger in my sleep. I'm still here. See, prayer works. Miranda,
absolutely.
You have shown me the light. I'm going to log off now because I am religious now. Thank you for your donation, Miranda. And also, top 5 patrons. What kind of voice do you want me to read these in? What kind of accent or voice?
Your voice. Your voice with a twist.
With a twist.
Well, however you feel is natural to you.
So I'm going to read it in the voice I use when I go back home to visit my family, who I don't want to think I forgot where I came from. Top 5 patrons. Dingleberry Jackson. Oops, all singularity. Devor Valjean. Kalevi Helveti. Left in the Leaves. Honorable mention, Ben 99. Thank you.
I thought you were chasing down a woman with eyes of emerald green then for trying to steal your husband.
Jolene.
That was amazing. Yeah, well, I certainly couldn't do it in that accent, even if I wanted to. So, patrons, thank you very much. We do appreciate your patronage. I am working on, just for a little heads up, I am working on a couple of little things just to give our patrons that little bit extra. And hopefully in the next couple of months or so, we should see some of that come into fruition. So thank you very, very much for your patronage. And we do very much appreciate it. I am going to go back to some of these amazing screenshots we have stored up. The second one we have is intelligent design is a legitimate scientific theory. You apparently don't know the requirements for being a scientific theory as good as the Big Bang. Neither are scientifically provable.
The Big Bang and Big Pharma are scientifically provable. They are, I promise.
Do you want to take a shot at these, Sydney? Because I might go off a little bit on this one.
I think that person should call in. I think they should call in and they should tell us the truth. I legitimately want to hear it. I know it sounds like maybe we're being a little sarcastic, but I would actually really like to hear, because when somebody sounds that confident in what they believe, I'm immediately intrigued in a genuine way. And I would love for them to call in and talk to us a little bit more about that, because I feel like hearing it from them as opposed to reading it in a comment would maybe make a big difference? ? You never know until you try. You should call in. I know you're watching.
I have once, on occasion, to read scientific papers, and I've only read one in a legitimate journal. I've only read one, which is from intelligent design proponents, and I actually reported it to the journal because they didn't declare that they were actually part of a creationist network. When they'd written the paper, they left that completely undeclared. They'd come up with their own experiments using their own computer algorithms.
Interesting.
To create their own hypothesis. And in the end, all they got out of this, and it was published in a legitimate scientific journal, all they got out of the end of it was our conclusion, bearing in mind they'd chosen all their own parameters, is that we think that evolution cannot be supported with the evidence it has. And that's it. That's all. That was the kind of conclusion to the whole thing.
But you
That
have
is
to
the
back it
only
up.
paper I have read on intelligent design, and it didn't even evidence the claim they were making, which was that God had created people.
That's, you know, when I was a kid, when I was like 10, I thought a scientific journal was the personal diary of a scientist, and that we were just reading their journal. And I thought that was so rude. I was like, man, that sucks that whenever you become a scientist, people just get to read your private thoughts in your journals.
People's, yeah.
And that they just write about science things. Yeah.
Today cracked the cosmic code of DNA, then had wank. Yeah.
And then their mom like submits it, and they're like, Mom, that was private. Gosh.
It's amazing. And yeah, stuff like that really gets to me. And then so this is one half of it where you might have noticed I've gone on a little bit of a rant like this.
Go for it.
They have this one half of it where they kind of claim one thing is a scientific theory which isn't. And then they have this other half of it where they're saying it is just as good as a legitimate scientific theory. No, it's not. The Big Bang has loads and loads and millions and squillions of bits of evidence pointing to it. It really, really is a well-defined theory. And you can tell it's a well-defined theory because there are many, many, many hypotheses in the same area. And none of them hold up as well as the Big Bang. That's why it's the Big Bang theory. That's why that's the theory and not the hypothesis, because it is actually well held up. And yes, we have questions that come out. You know, the James Webb Telescope has done great things. It's given us more questions to answer. But that's the beauty of science. That doesn't undermine science. That's the beauty of science. I love it. I absolutely love stuff like this.
And I feel like a good rule of thumb, and this is for things you agree with and for things you disagree with, not just theories you disagree with. If you read something and it makes a declarative statement, like this is how things are, this is the way, this is correct, and then it does not back up that statement with more details or information, or at least links to where they got that information, I would not believe it. Even if it supports something you think is true, don't get sucked into that, because maybe one, the thing that you actually believe is true may not actually be true, and this may be your way to discover that you've been incorrect about that the whole time. No shame in being incorrect. I love being proven wrong. I love learning new stuff, but also you can't get sucked into this idea where as long as the statement exists somewhere, that means it's true. You want evidence, you want facts, you want multiple sources to back up everything that you decide you're going to live your life by. And if it doesn't, question everything, all of it. Again, even if it backs up what you believe to be true, you need to know why it is you believe that to be true. And chances are, maybe you've been incorrect about that for a long time, and now's your chance to figure out what the real evidence is, or where that's coming from, that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to kind of have that. And you know, when you're looking at stuff, you know, I look at a lot of philosophy papers. And one of the things when you're studying philosophy, but I think you call it college in the US, we'd call it university. When you're studying that kind of that level, you're encouraged to challenge yourself.
Yes,
you really, really are encouraged to challenge yourself. And when I get these apologists who come on, and I'm sure you've had them yourself, Sydney, or these apologists who come in and they come in hot with these, right, there cannot be an infinity. There can't be an infinity, therefore God, and all these things that they do after watching a couple of shit YouTube videos with these crap apologists on. This is how I kind of distinguish the guys who really know philosophy. And there are some good theist philosophers out there who I've had brilliant conversations with.
Yeah.
This is how you distinguish between those good theist philosophers and the guys who've watched a couple of YouTube videos. Because if somebody starts off with the premise that there cannot be an infinity, which, by the way, is total bullshit, if you want to call up and challenge me on it,
call in.
It's absolute bullshit. But if you're going to come in hot and say there cannot be an infinity, that immediately tells me that you have not had sufficient philosophy training to question yourself and your own opinions on things.
Yeah.
Because even if you don't believe that there is an infinity, which is legitimate, it's a legitimate belief to hold.
Right.
Even if you do not believe that there is an infinity, to state that there cannot be an infinity is a huge, huge red flag. It really, really is. And I think these things are very, very important. I think that point you made, Sydney, was such a good point. We must check ourselves. We must check ourselves.
Yes.
We have another caller in the screening room. I'm going to read one more of these out while they are being screened. And this one I like. I think this one's hilarious. Number 3 is find a better use for your time.
I mean, that sounds like just constructive feedback, to be honest. I feel like we could all find a pretty good use for our time when we spend too much time on the internet. I feel like that's one of our parents just writing in, being like, be more productive, find a better use for your time.
Do better. Stop writing in those journals, telling everybody what you're doing under the covers, because I keep refinding them, thinking they're scientific and reading them, and I don't want to know that shit. Do something better with your time.
I feel like that one wasn't mad. They were just disappointed. They're just like, find a better use for your time.
I mean, I get this. In real life, I get this because my degree is in religion, philosophy, and ethics, and I'm an atheist. I've always been an atheist. And people I meet in real life do often say to me, why are you doing that if you don't believe in God? Genuinely, people are genuinely, even like other atheists, just genuinely confused. Not why I do it, but I love it. I have an interest in it.
Right.
I'm an old fart, and I've been doing this for over 30 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why I do it, because I have an interest in it. I am allowed to have interests.
Right. And not everybody does. I try to remind people all the time, in other parts of the world, having a YouTube channel like this would get us killed. Yeah. We would be committing a crime. This would be illegal. So if all I have to do is hop on the internet on a Sunday and talk about it, like so many people risk their lives every day doing that in other countries. And it is just a Sunday thing that I'm doing. Right. Yeah. And that's what I think is also important about it, is like, yeah, to other people in our countries, they may be like, this is odd. Why would they want to spend all their time doing that? But in other countries, it's not the case. It is a crime. They're not allowed to say things like this. They have opinions that they have to keep secret. And to me, it's like, if the least thing that we can do is spend our weekend on here talking to people and you know, rebel rousing in the comments, why not?
Yeah. We do have another call. I'm going to bring in Meek from Maryland, who is saying, I'm not sure to identify as an atheist or a theist. Let's have that conversation, Meek. Thank you for calling. Talk us through it, please, if you will.
Sure. It's just not being able to identify who I am as others perceive it. Like I'm aware of my own history, and I'm aware of, right now, but I don't think any of us are aware of any kind of future. You know what I mean? So I see all the time how when I identify a certain way, it triggers this conversation pattern that always just ends up like into this yes no thing, or it just always seems like a trap to me. And I've never really been able to do it. I just kind of use them in conversations when needed.
Do you have a lot of these conversations where you feel compelled to identify one way or the other?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to for, work or just buy milk. You know what I mean? Like people, like when you call here or anywhere else, people, I mean, you guys are understanding about it, but if I call somewhere else and they ask me questions about myself and I can't answer it properly or quickly, it's an issue. So I can work within it, but it's just not something I hold to personally.
Do you feel at all like you're still religious, or in the times where you identify as Christian, you're just doing it to stop a conversation?
I don't know if I've ever really been Christian or not. I was born, I guess, atheist, atheist father and maybe a lazy Christian mother. I mean, I think she's atheist too. I'm not sure. Really, we don't talk about that much. But yeah, it was just not really something we cared about either way. I mean, everybody else does, obviously. So I just have to be careful about other people's. I try to be respectful because I have to go into other people's personal spaces and try to help them do whatever, if I'm doing a plumbing job or if I'm over there just hanging out, it's their own personal space. And I think the best way for me to be respectful is not to come at somebody with all of my, all of that. Especially the people that know me, they already know who I am. I've been doing this my whole life, so it's not difficult for me, but it's difficult when people know me for a long time and they don't realize that until later, or they they know about it, but they get like it's complicated, as you can imagine.
Do you ever feel like the responding in a way like, oh, I'm respectful of everybody's beliefs, as opposed to giving a title, as opposed to saying I'm an atheist or I'm agnostic, or lying and saying that you're a Christian or something? Do you think that in these scenarios it would be valuable to say, you know what, I'm just respectful of everybody's beliefs, and just leaving it there?
That's what
Got it.
That's what I try to do. I don't lie to people.
Right.
I'll agree with them on certain issues, but I think in their head they get these, they're like, okay, agreed with me on this, and they agree with me on this and this, so they're probably this. And then that's where their label is. And then they hear me say something to somebody else or something else, and I'm like, okay, he's a liar. Okay, or he's this, or whatever. So I can see why it's difficult for others to not be able to label others, but I think that's just a huge trap we all fall into, unfortunately.
Right.
Like when we create separate communities, like LGBTQ or whatever the fuck conspiracy people do, it just separates us more. And then when we try to come together, it's like we just have these clear circles around ourselves, and it gets messy when we try to get together and be in a common place just to fart or eat or whatever we got to do together sometimes, because we want to be social, but we also need to be private. And it's tricky. It's really tricky because, just navigating through a place you go to every day, when somebody sees you and they see you doing something they don't have ever seen you do before, that instantly they're just like, the judgment of you changes, and it can flip quick. And when it happens, it throws them through a loop too. So I try to let people know about it right away, but I don't think it really sinks in until they see it really. So that's why I'd rather show than tell, I guess.
Do you find yourself in any scenarios where you can let them know, or you can set a boundary where you're like, hey, I don't like to talk about religion, and then just move forward? Is that a possibility at all in any of these scenarios you find yourself in, where you're like, hey, I'd love to hang out, I'd love to get together, but if you don't mind, I'm trying to detox from talking about religion or any of this stuff, I just want to have a good time? Is that a possibility in any of these scenarios?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places out there that, like you can't, most places are just like no religion, no politics, all here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's what most people try to create, that because it creates such a hostile environment where people just want to go and get a drink of fucking coffee or something. And so that's all I really am trying to do, like personally with my own self. So I think just from, the jump, I just was very hard for me to understand what other people meant when they were talking about atheism or theism or what they don't know. Like, why are you going to tell me what you don't know? I just never understood how people can add that up.
Are these people that you at all can change how often you see them? Like, is it a situation where you really care about these people and you still want to see them, but every time you hang out, this comes up? Or is it a situation where maybe you can slowly remove yourself from these conversations and these social groups without having to break up with them? Or is it like a job where you have to go every day?
Each one's, different. So
Yeah.
the jobs are the most complicated because of the work I do. So as soon as I leave a job, of course, they're going to be like, oh boy, what's this nut going to do? And I just want to move on with my life. And I guess everybody has to be defensive because we're all snake oil salesmen in a way. We all have the ability to be anything, and I just am very aware of that, and I try to make sure I don't come off that way, or if I start sensing that I do, I just back out of the situation and try to reapproach it later.
Interesting. Do you find that it's exhausting for you to ever just let them talk and not engage? For example, at a past job I had, they loved bringing up politics and they loved bringing up religion in the office because it was more of like I dare somebody to disagree with this in front of everybody. It's like an open work environment. So I just wouldn't engage.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, okay. And when they would say, well, what are your thoughts? I'd be like, I'm working, and just shut it down without giving any indication of what side I'm on. Is that something that you would be like into trying, or is it one of those, I really hate having to hear this stuff at work in general, like it's just exhausting to be in the room?
No, I love it. I grew up with a large family. We're around a lot of large families, so I don't mind other people's opinions. I enjoy listening more than I do talking.
That right there is a great way to approach these scenarios. I love listening. I'm not a big talker. I'm a lurker. I love listening. Please continue. Or I'm just enjoying the conversation. I'm just listening. I feel like that's a good way to kind of in a neutral way say, don't ask me stuff. I'm just going to sit here and listen to you talk, because after a while they stop talking because they're just the ones talking, or they're only being spoken to by people who agree with them, and it's kind of boring. So, I mean, maybe that's an approach you can take where you say, oh, I'm just listening. I'm just enjoying the conversation. It's like a podcast. I don't really like to talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm slowly working on like that kind of just giving myself time to be quiet. It's like my own. So.
And because it's tough to argue with that when somebody's like, I don't really like talking. It's tough to really pick on them for that, as opposed to, I don't really talk about religion much. That piques people's interest because they say, well, why? What side are you on? When you're like, I'm an introvert. I just like to listen. I almost feel like people, for some reason, respect that a lot more, in a way. Richard, I don't know if you agree.
Because...
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think it's I think being honest, there's that old saying, honesty is the best policy. I think in a lot of cases it is, and as long as you're not putting yourself in a position where you're going to be kind of ostracized, or you're not relying on someone financially or anything like that, which it doesn't sound like you're particularly in that position. I think as long as you're not in those positions, and as long as you're not coming across as aggressive, as long as you're being true to yourself and just saying, look, this is where I stand. I'm not 100% convinced. I don't really know all the answers, but this is where I stand, and I'd like to have the conversation with you. I think people are usually pretty receptive to that.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with that. I had a boss once, and he told me, he said, you can't say no to money unless you have fuck you money. Yeah. And he's right. I mean, that was one of the big lessons in my life, because like wage slavery and stuff, you know what I mean? It's like people just own you when they know that you need what they have, and they'll just slowly feed you like that little drops of pennies, and when he told me that, it was just so obvious,
Yeah. They might own where you have to be, but they don't own what you get to say or what you have to say, if that makes sense. Nobody can own whether or not you'll engage in a conversation at all, whether you choose to engage. And if they do, it makes them look worse, if that makes sense, in order to really pull you out of your shell and like pry you out against your will. I don't think anybody really has the time or the energy for that beyond a certain point. I feel like we all work with the bully at one point. So come on. But that's the extent of it. It's like, nope, thanks. Nope, thanks. No, thanks. Just no, not engaging. Thank you.
Yeah, I think growing up as like a yes man my whole life is like no is my
yeah.
It's yeah.
Finding new ways to say no, new polite ways to say no. No, thanks. I'm good. I say that a lot too. That always confuses people when they're like, what do you think about this? I say, I'm good. And they pause for a second because that doesn't sound like an answer that makes sense with the question they just asked. And then they ask it again. I'm like, I'm good. Y'all talk. I'm good. And then they just stop asking because I'm boring.
It's funny too, because even like the way you say no, like you could say no, thank you, or you could say I'm good, or, no worries. But some people are even offended when you say no worries because they take it as like, oh, you're making it sound like I need, like even that's tricky. So it's, I've learned, I usually just try to like gauge the person's intent when they talk and see like what they want. Like we all do, you know what I mean? And then go from there.
Yeah, or if you say things like, honestly, I haven't even had my coffee yet. That's one that gets people to stop talking to me too. They'll be, what do you think about this? Honestly, I haven't even had my coffee yet. And then they laugh, right? But the kind of people that will get offended over things like I'm good are also the kind of people where there will be no value in that conversation whatsoever anyway. And you know that going in. So doing whatever you can do to avoid that conversation in general is probably better for anyone because they already seem a little slightly ready to go, kind of triggered and ready to have like a fight. And so at that point, engaging with them isn't even going to do you any good to begin with. You're not going to be able to say the correct answer, even if you agree with them. So that's almost a sign that disengaging is even more important. And if I've only had to use this once or twice, but when you say something like, oh, I'm good. No, thanks. I'm good. And people still dig. I go, are you okay? Are you feeling okay? Okay. Just making sure. And then just checking out of the conversation.
Yeah, I wish cops understood that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Like,
yeah. Just like, are you okay? Because then they start looking back on everything they said, and they're like, oh, maybe I did sound a little nuts there for a second. But I don't know. That sounds tough, though. I sympathize with that situation because when people think that they own you in any way, whether it's professionally or personally, it's always tough. And you feel like you owe them something when you really don't. You don't owe them anything. And if they're going to keep pressing the matter, it sounds like you're not going to get out of it unscathed anyway. So avoiding the conversation isn't even going to go worse than engaging in the conversation. It can only go downhill from there.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds tough. I'm sorry you have to deal with that.
It's okay. It's been 43 years of it, so I'm used to it a bit. It's just different new challenges each time. As soon as I think I got one down, I'm like, okay, cool, nailed this, and then another one hits me in the face. I'm like, oh shit, here we go again.
Not again. Yeah,
that sounds tough, Meek. It really, really does sound tough. I think this is one of those calls which is really great because I think there's a lot of people who are probably in your position who don't get the chance to call in, and they don't get the chance to kind of talk this over with people. They're just in that position that you're in day after day after day. And I think these are really productive calls because these aren't calls that are just helpful for you who is calling and wants to discuss it, but they're really, really valuable for so many people out there listening. And I really, really do approach you bringing this topic up. Is there anything else you'd kind of like to go through just before we let you go?
No, that's it. That was good. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you calling. It is, like I say, it's such an important subject to bring up. And it is one of those which isn't talked about that much. Subjects that are talked about a lot, especially by me, are those of people in the side chat and in the comments section talking trash and not calling in the show. So while Sydney was deliciously handling that last caller, I was kind of perusing the chat, which is not something I do very often. I've asked 2 people to call in, and as yet, none of them are doing. So I'm going to address one of them. One of them was a theist who did the usual, God's real, God's coming kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. Give us a call, convince us. How many times have I said this? But there's another guy who's talking about infinity, saying that infinity doesn't exist and infinity can't exist, and it's our job to prove it can exist. Well, it just so happens. Let me help you out. I mean, I do want you to call because I do want to discuss it. But one of the statements you made in the side chat was that you cannot have infinity plus 1. That was one of the statements you made. So I'm going to just let you know about something called quantum electrodynamics, which, if I quote John D. Barrow, who is a science communicator, is also a deist, by the way, but is a very, very, very good science communicator. And John D. Barrow says of quantum electrodynamics, it is the best theory in the whole of science. Its predictions are more accurate than anything else that we know about in the universe. And the calculations always give you the answer of infinity plus 1. This is the best evidenced theory in the whole of science, and its answer always gives you infinity plus 1. And in fact, what they have to do is take that infinity away because which I'm hoping this person will call in so we can actually have this conversation about why we'd have to take that infinity away. But they have to take that infinity away to evidence that quantum electrodynamics. There's a reason for this, which I'm hoping to get into. I made a post about infinity because one of the people in the atheist experience, atheist versus theist debate group, was talking about infinity the other day, and I made a post in there about it as well, because it's really important, and it's very, very important to understand when you're sat there saying, well, that's what I'm saying is actual infinities exist. Theoretical infinities exist, but actual infinities don't exist. And I use this example then, and I'm going to repeat it now because it's very, very, very important. Mr. Oppenheimer, I'm sure you're familiar with the chap.
He's from the Barbie movie, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
That one?
He created something that went boom with a little bit of an explosion. He was crap when it came to actual laboratory physics. He was rubbish at it. By his own admission, he was lousy at it. He worked purely in the theoretical realm. And yeah, the theoretical physics that he worked on developed the nuclear bomb. If you think theoretical things aren't applicable in reality, I invite you to go and stand at ground zero when a nuclear bomb goes off. And if you're right, when you survive, which you inevitably will if you're right, you can tell us all about why actual infinities don't really matter, because they don't really exist. They only exist in theory.
See, this is why you are so much better at this than I am, because somebody says you can't have infinity plus 1. You do all this research, and I just say, I don't know, man, but there's no heaven. Like, I don't know about all that infinity stuff, but there ain't no heaven when I die. So the end.
I'm almost certain there will be a lot of people who disagree that I am better at this than you are.
IDK, brother, but there's no heaven, so that's all I know.
Give us a call. The person in the chat who is talking smack about infinity. You are more than welcome to call us. We have a phone line, and the person who is still in there preaching about God, you give us a call too, because I am sick to death. I am sick to my back teeth, as we say in Yorkshire, of people. Yes, that's the thing. That's the thing. Of people preaching and telling us God is coming soon and not having the kahunas to call us and actually give us a demonstration of this being the case. Put your money where your mouth is. Give the show a call. But anyway, after my little rant, second, third, fourth little rant of the evening, the afternoon, wherever you are in the world, I am going to read out another one of these screenshots that we have.
Oh boy.
Suppose the Bible was completely fabricated. That doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. You can't use the Bible to disprove the Bible.
Okay, so this is where I just get upset. So I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I'm literally a professional level debater. I've been doing debate for years. And something that makes me crazy is when people present an idea, for example, God is real. And you say, no, he's not. And they say, well, then prove he's not. And everyone knows that the burden of proof is the person who presented the idea. It is not my job to disprove God. It is your job to prove God. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an atheist. I'm saying that when I started debate, I was an evangelical Christian. I was all for God. And I still would have looked you in the face and been like, that is not my job. That is your job to prove that God exists. That's what makes me crazy. That's what makes me upset, is like at least on a baseline correct way to have an argument. If you want to argue with me, that's fine. Let's do it. I'll do it respectfully. But don't try to gaslight me into thinking the burden of proof is on me when you're the one that made that statement. Now, if I came in and I said, hey, stranger, God's not real, and they said, yes, he is, and I was like, you got to prove it. I'm wrong too. I got to prove that he's not real first. That's just baseline communication skills. If you're going to come into the chat and you're going to say, Jesus loves you, God still exists, blah, blah, fine. I do that. Do the thing. But it is not my job to then prove that I am right when I disagree with you. And if you disagree with that, call in. Even if you're on the same side of me and you're like, that's not how debate works. One, that is. Two, call in, disagree with me. Let's talk about it. That's what makes me crazy. When people drop an idea and they don't have enough evidence or they're not ready to defend that idea. So they try to turn around and make it your job to defend that idea. It doesn't matter what the idea is. The idea can be chicken nuggets are the best. No, they're not. Oh yeah, prove it. No, you prove it. You said chicken nuggets are the best. Prove it. Rant over. Sorry.
I love it.
I get heated because I'm like, that's not
Good.
like even when I was my most Christian, I would say that's not how that works. It's not how that works.
Well, I've done my fair share of ranting. I think it's only fair that you take over for a while. The great thing about this little quote that was kind of sent our way in the response to the show we did, I think it was on TikTok, is the first line of it says, suppose the Bible is completely fabricated. I have never made that statement and never would make the statement that the Bible is completely fabricated. So you're already starting from a false premise. I'm going to read another one out because I'm having lots of fun. And then in the lack of people in the side chat who are still talking smack and still not calling in, rather than me just talking inanely to myself, I'm going to respond to some of these things that we have actually got to respond to. So the fifth one, we're going through these like a wildfire today. The fifth one we have for you is interesting. I would wager this man believes in evolution. Yet no human has ever seen an animal change his kind. But I bet he believes it. I accept the theory of evolution. I do not believe evolution. Sydney, I don't know what your stance is on that.
Well, this, I think, is either a person being willfully ignorant or being misinformed. The entire idea of evolution is that it takes forever. It takes a very long time, millions and millions of years. That's the whole thing. So when somebody says nobody's seen an animal change in their lifetime, either they are literally misinformed, they don't understand the idea of evolution, which is that it takes millions of years, millions and millions of years, or They are literally just here doing that thing where they think they drop a bomb and then they leave, right? And they know for a fact there's so many things wrong with what they just said, but they want to trigger the libs or whatever it is that people say, But that's so if they are willfully misinformed, if they truly do not understand, I encourage them to look into evolution, not because I want them to believe it, but because I want them to know what it is they're arguing against. It makes you look foolish when you don't have the information you need, even if you still disagree with it in the end. Don't look foolish. Go read into what it is. But if you're one of those people dropping comments, call in. If you're so brave, call in. I dare you. Call in so that I can be nice to you, because I am not mean to people who call in, but still call in. It feels threatening to say that. I can't hear you, Richard. I think you're muted.
I've done the Johnny Angel. I'm
There you
really
go.
proud of myself. Okay, so I just want to say to Angut that I am not going to do an American accent just to be at your beck and call because you have asked me to do one in the chat. There you go, sir.
Sign up for the Patreon and he'll do one. Just do it.
So we have got one final one of these, and as we're on a roll, and due to the lack of callers, we might as well do it. How does, excuse me, I'm getting excited, I can't speak. How does he know how long anybody's lived? Has he been around the whole time to make that determination? Maybe the earth was different before the flood. Maybe the atmosphere was different. Nobody knows one way or the other. This is a great one to end on. This is referring to a call that we took a couple of weeks ago where somebody made the claim that people in the Bible had lived to 700 years old. And I went on a little rant saying nobody has lived to 700 years old. We just don't know. Until evidence comes out to the contrary, we should not make the assessment that somebody has lived to 700 years old just because a book tells us to. This is where skepticism comes in. And it's really, really important that just because something says something and something might be the case, we should not believe that thing until we have a demonstration that it is the case. And this is what my little rant was about. It wasn't saying that nobody was ever able to live to 700 years old in any possible world. What it was saying was that until we have sufficient evidence, because everything we know of points to the contrary, until we have sufficient evidence that this is the case, we have no justification in believing that people live to 700 years old.
Also, though, doesn't the Bible literally talk about the atmosphere being different before and after the flood? Isn't the firmament like a whole thing that it dives into? Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I'm almost positive that was a whole thing. So there's that. But two, you could say that exact same argument about the entire Bible. I could say, you weren't there. You don't know. Blah, blah, blah. Were you there 1,000 years ago? Were you there 2,000 years ago? How do you know any of this is true? The questions they posed could literally be turned back around and used to basically support our side of the argument as well. Yeah, you're right. Nobody knows any of that. Exactly. So we agree. Call in.
Yeah, I actually, my favorite part of that whole flood thing, it's not the ridiculous amount of animals that go on the ark and don't eat each other when they're inclined to do so. It's not the fact that they come off and all the penguins manage to scuttle the way back up to Antarctica and without being magically transported by God, they just go on a big journey. It's nothing to do with that. The best part of that is the fact that God literally puts the rainbow in the sky. This is in the Bible, folks. This is in the book you believe to be true. It puts the rainbow in the sky as a sign of the covenant, yes, but also, and this is the bit that is usually left out by theists in this discussion, and I don't know why, also, so that he remembers the covenant. That's why it's put there. It's not put there as a sign of the covenant for mankind. It's put there so God himself remembers the covenant. It is the proverbial string around the finger for God so that he remembers. The Bible tells us absolutely, definitively, in black and white, it's wonderful, that God is prone to forgetfulness. It tells us it's great. That's the best part of that whole story for me.
God is like, Siri, remind me in 1,000 years this covenant that I made. Thank you. And Siri's like, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. And he's like, damn it, Siri.
It is brilliant. I love it. I have loved presenting the show with you, Sydney, the new host of Talk Heathen, official host of Talk Heathen. You will, if you love what Sydney's done today that way, if you love what Sydney's done today, as I do, then you will get the chance to see her do it much more often in the future, because she is going to be back with us and she's going to be taking many more calls. So show your appreciation to appreciation or any other form of words you care to just spew out your mouth and get them entirely wrong. Let's send some love rings out. Let's do the magic. Let's do the magic and send the love rings. There we go. We are going to be in the atheist community of Discord after both myself and Sydney, and the backup host, Kelly Laughlin, will be there. So if you want to continue the conversation over there, get yourself over to the atheist community of Discord, and we will have those conversations with you. We had a really long one last week. It was great. We had some great conversations. If you don't believe, this is your community and you appreciate you being here. And I think tonight's calls have really demonstrated that, you know, this community is really important for people. It really is important for people who are in positions where they feel that they might not be able to speak to those directly around them. They might have to reach out and speak to those outside of their immediate friends and family. And this is a community for those people to do that. We have the atheist community of Discord. We have the fan-run Facebook groups for people who want to go there and just find a community. You know, most of the people who are volunteers for the ACA started out in one way or another finding the community of the ACA, whether it was watching the TV show, whether it was going to the Free Thought Library in Austin. You know, we all came across the community and joined the community and ended up as volunteers here. It really is important. And, you know, we do appreciate you being here. And if you don't believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
See you next time.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live, Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.